everybody. Steve Pulley from NJ Advanced Media, and welcome back to the Pleistocene and Piscataway podcast. I am calling it that because this offense has put us all back into the Ice Age. I am joined. That's a good line. I can't believe I'm wasting that here. You might see that in print too. I am joined as always by Keith Sargent and James Cratch. And fellas, I'm going to start for the first time ever this podcast with a spoiler alert because I feel like I know how this story ends. I've seen it before. So if you don't want to know what's going to happen here over the next few games, this is a good time to turn off the podcast. But here's what's going to happen: they're going to finish 1-11, and when we're getting whichever one of you guys talks to Pat Hobbs, and you get the explanation for why Chris Ash is coming back in 2019, he's going to reference this 18-15 loss to Northwestern in some way. And it's going to be, hey, look, I know we didn't have a great year, but I mean, look at the Northwestern game. You know, that's what I expected to see from this team. The fight, the fire from the coach, the 60-minute effort, almost could have won that game. It's going to drive fans crazy, but I really think that's what's going to happen. Sarge, do you agree?
I 100% agree. It feels like that type of moment where, to a point, he's correct. The problem is you're just going to look back at Kansas and Buffalo, and they could have had a season where they went 4-8, and the fan base wouldn't be like this. But when you lose the games, we're going to relitigate this between now and the end of the year. When you lose those games in non-competitive fashion, the talk of being competitive with Northwestern rings hollow.
Right, exactly. And Cratch, I think the other point of it is just, the first two seasons, the way they were, the recruiting class, the way it is. There's a lot of other things that go into this. But I mean, do you see the same thing? Are you on board with this, that the Northwestern game is going to be what's held up as, hey, look at the effort. Look where we are. Look what we did in that game.
Yes, I would think unless they have a similar performance in one of these final four games, but I don't think that's going to happen. But my thing is, if that's the way it is and everything we have heard or seen or been told indicates that they're not going to make a change to the top, and if there's nothing in this final month that can change that decision, why not just come out now? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And stop the twisting in the wind and say, Chris Ash is our football coach. It'd be better off if you're going to use the Northwestern game as one of your main talking points. Do it right now when it's fresh and we got a bye week.
And here's the other problem with it too, Steve, is, Purdue comes up with a performance of the ages. They're year 3 under Jeff Brom, and their performance of the ages results in a thumping of the number 2 team in the country.
Right.
Syracuse, nearly beats Clemson this year, but they beat him last year. They beat Clemson last year. They're in year 3 under Dino Babers. And so if you're going to have an effort and it was a great effort against Northwestern, but if you're going to have it, it has to equate into a win too.
Yep, absolutely. All right, let's dive into this game. And I read the film review as I do every morning with every Monday morning with great excitement, and really the week just goes perpetually just right downhill from there. Nothing can top that. And I mean, analyzing your analysis of the offense, you thought that Art Zakowski played better, Cratch, than he had before. It's still, I look at these numbers, 81 yards on 15 completions, which is almost hard to do. It's still, that's why they lost the game. They're just not good enough in the passing game. I mean, what did you see when you looked at it? And is there more there than that maybe we missed at first glance?
Well, I mean, I looked at it, I counted, and look, drops is a very subjective thing. I counted 5 drop passes for projected about 45 yards and a touchdown. So, and then he had 4 passes batted at the line. The biggest one being the second to last drive. He probably hits Raheem Blackshear across the middle for a first down, and a pass gets batted. So, I think that when you add those kind of numbers in, look, and Art also kind of misfired on a few balls. There was a ball that hit Bo Melton in the hands early on in the game, but it was an errant pass. I wouldn't count that as a drop. I think it would have been a better game. Now, that being said, if they catch all 5 of those balls, he still is only thrown for 126 yards. So, I mean, it doesn't look great, but I thought it was a game where the defense played it good enough to win, and the offense literally just had to make 1 or 2 more plays, and they win that game. And it wasn't just the passing game. It was the running game, which I'm sure we'll get to in a second. It was poor clock management at the end of the first half, which you probably could have gotten Justin Davidowitz 5 or 6 yards closer, and that probably might mean overtime or anything else. So I just felt the offense, that's what kind of lost the game on Saturday.
Right.
Steve, what I thought lost the game really was the third quarter where they had the lead. Northwestern gets the ball first, and you force a turnover to Trevor Moore's fumble. Mm-hmm. And then you come out and you get the field goal, which is good. You get to the 15-7 lead. Northwestern comes back. They just never were able to get any separation in the third quarter. I think the one drive where we kind of questioned, well, where's Pacheco? I get why Blackshear started the third quarter as a reward. He came back. He is their best offensive player. But then their second series, they come out. Trey Sneed comes out to start, and it's a 3-and-out. Mm-hmm. And those were the types of moments where if they can get a 7 and 8 play drive, it keeps the defense off the field. It sets the tempo. They establish it. I think they really needed to play Pacheco on that series, the second series of the third quarter.
And it's interesting with the Pacheco thing has been a big topic, and we asked Ash about it, and his answer was less than satisfactory to all of us. And then we discussed it in print. I got an email from a fan who was like, "Look, Blackshear came back from his grandmother's funeral. You got to give that kid." Put that kid back on the field. And I understand that to a degree, but I'm also, this is not rec league soccer. This is not JV, high school. This is the big business in college football. When you've got a kid who's playing that well, it's going to sound crass, and I'm sorry, but you got to ride him. It doesn't, it's great that Blackshear came back, and it shows he's a team player, and the coach is paid to make these decisions, and to not have him out there for that series, and then the play calling in that series. When you're through, I think one of the series in the third quarter, there was two passes and downfield, and clearly, they've been struggling to hit those all year. You've got to be able to run the ball in that situation. And, I was a little baffled by all of that, Gretch.
No. I was going to say, and you're right about it, but I thought the answer from Chris Ash, where he said, I don't know, I'm going to have to talk to the offensive staff, after the game. He should have been talking to the offensive staff during the game. Yes. Right. Look, he's given a lot of power to John McNulty. Chris Ash has made no secret he's not an offensive guy. But that being said, the head coach's job is to say what everyone else is in the building, is thinking. What we're thinking up in the press box is, well, where's Pacheco? His job during the game is to talk about personnel and tell John McNulty, this is the way I want this drive to go. Let's establish a run. Let's, try to have a sustained drive here. And, his answer was certainly lacking in the postgame.
I think too, look, there are probably some reasons, I'm not saying they're great reasons, but they're probably football reasons why they had. They only ran 20 plays in the second half. Northwestern ran 50, and I think that's basically the biggest reason why Northwestern won the game. 12 were passes. Pacheco was raw. It was Kamal Seymour who whiffed on Joe Gaziano, the big defensive end, in the first half. But Pacheco doesn't pick up that guy kind of screaming free. He crushes Sitkowski. I think McNulty has pass protection concerns with Pacheco. Trey Sneed played really well in kind of unexpected role for him, especially when they were running the 2-minute drill at the end of the first half. They consider Blackshear to be their best player. As Steve said, he comes back. He's a team guy after being with his family after his grandmother's death. I just think it probably was a bunch of little things that added up. And we've seen this before where they kind of have lost Pacheco in the shuffle of a game because they're sticking with, the guys they trust, they feel comfortable with, Blackshear and Hillman. Obviously, Hillman was out on Saturday. But that being said, I think Chris Ash, you're the head coach. You got to say, okay, what are we doing here? Let's get him in the game. And even if you have those concerns, you still can find a way to get him the ball 1 or 2 or 3 more times, I think.
Right, absolutely.
And that's a great answer, James. And my question, again, it goes back to Chris Ash's, if the pass pro, and I think you're right, because you look at that play where Sitkowski got hit, that's a pass pro issue. But why can't Chris Ash say that? Why can't, and I know he's not going to throw a kid under the bus per se, but he can certainly acknowledge, well, we're trying to come back or we're trying to establish, some passing, and we just didn't think that, Pacheco at that point was going to be our best option and in passing situations. I mean, he could say stuff like that. Instead, his answer was, what did you think, Steve? What did you think about the postgame?
No, yeah, I absolutely. I thought that. Well, I mean, again, the one thing about Chris Ash, he is honest. I mean, there is.
He is.
I mean, we've had some problems with honesty in the past with head coaches, and I do appreciate the fact that when he comes out and says something, he says what he doesn't have an answer for it. I think that has come back to what Crouch said. He's focused on defense, but he's the head coach. You're absolutely right. He's got to be more aware of everything on the field, and the fact that his offense is a major problem. Well, that's on him.
Well,
3 years.
I will say
3 years.
3 years of it. Yeah.
I will say this. When we taped the video after the game, I kind of mentioned this. Look, Chris Ash took over the defense, and I think most people were okay. Thought at the least that was an acceptable move for him to make. Clearly, it had an impact on the defense on Saturday. They played the best game of the season. The personal foul, firing Chris Ash, getting him fired up. Now, part of me thought, well, maybe Chris Ash is just sitting on the bench, drawing up a defense. He's got to talk with the defense. But as I rewatched the game, it wasn't like that. It wasn't like he had his nose in the playbook in the grease board whenever the offense was on the field. He was still kind of monitoring. I go back to when they wasted way too much time on that drive at the end of the first half. The camera caught Chris Ash kind of like waving his finger like, let's go, guys, hurry it up, let's go, run the play. And first off, they had a timeout there. I still don't know why you don't just call timeout there instead of letting 18 seconds run off the clock. But that's neither here nor there. So now, having rewatched the game, I kind of lean back towards it more of a, hey, you're the head coach. Because it wasn't like he was only with the defense. He clearly was monitoring the offense in the game. So I think that it now falls back on him more so than I thought it did Saturday.
It's not like Andy Reid when you're watching the Chiefs play in the NFL and like the defense is on the field and Reid is standing at the bench talking to Mahomes. You're like, there's no involvement whatsoever in the defense. You're right. He is there coaching. So that's a good point. All right, let's go right to true and false. Let's dive in. And the first one, I'm going to keep it. I'm going to alter it though. I'm going to keep it. If this team goes 1-11 with 4 humiliating blowouts to end the season, Chris Ash gets fired. True or false?
False.
Nothing can happen. Wow, we're good. It's going to be very interesting. All right, true or false? This offense would have been better had former walk-on Tom Flacco not transferred. True or false?
I'm going to say false.
False? All right. Sarge?
I keep on coming back to when you have a kid who's struggling like Sikowski in moments, and we know what Gio Rossinho has done in 2 years, 12 games, and we know that the coaching staff was trying to get better at the position. That maybe you throw in Flacco because but again, I don't think that the coaching staff had any confidence that that he was going to be the guy, and if he was, they would have tried harder to keep him from transferring. So I'll say false.
Right. I'm gonna say false only because he wouldn't have gotten a shot. That's part of the reason. And if you're not familiar, he's lighting it up in division.
But I do think that and I actually mentioned this in the recruiting thing that I think part of where they're at is because he's recruited poorly at the position, and that you don't have an Anthony Russo, or you don't have guys who have gotten away, maybe even a grad transfer guy who they don't have a whole lot of options to turn to when your true freshman is struggling the way he is.
Anthony Russo leading Temple to a win. Good point.
Yeah, I think Flacco, he's in the perfect type of offense for him at Towson. And, that they're not going to run that offense here. So maybe if Jerry Kill was still here, things would be different. Or maybe if Drew Maringer was here when Flacco got here, things would be different. But I just don't think in John McNulty's offense, he would have had the same success he's having at Towson.
True or false? Clock management continues to be a hot mess for Chris Ash.
True. I thought the end of the first half, I didn't realize it in real time, and that's also on McNulty. I mean, that was just, they wasted a lot of time, and I understand that they are always kind of going to these situations at a deficit because they call too many timeouts. But even then, they had one timeout. They could have easily handled that better and still had some more time on the back end to run one more play, get a couple yards, give Davidowitz. I mean, look, he's a great kicker, but no kick. Adam Vinatieri's not perfect with 47 out.
Right, Sarge.
Yeah, Chris Ash uses his timeouts like my daughter uses. Like when I give her money, and and she has to get rid of it right away. Like there's no way she can put it in a piggy bank. She has to go to the dollar store or the Five Below or wherever and buy something.
Exactly it, right?
He does not want to keep those timeouts.
It's like there's a box of donuts in the house right here. Those donuts are not lasting.
They're not lasting.
And we're going to get rid of them. That's exactly it. I think part of the problem is that they're never in close games. Like, we don't know how to manage close games because they don't have them ever. It's got to be part of it. It's just like, it's an unfamiliar territory for him and the staff to deal with.
One thing I've always kind of wondered is that, and this is going to sound a little bit wacky, but as a culture with like video games and all these analytics sites, we're much more aware of like clock management, I think, now than we probably used to be. So I've always wondered, like, if I went back in time, like, was Vince Lombardi like a complete disaster with clock management?
I'll never know.
Did Chuck Noll have no idea? Like, it's like John Madden, like, you should have seen the timeout that guy called.
Paul Brown, this guy could not manage the clock. I mean, great.
I always wondered, like, are we just kind of hypersensitive because, you got to do this, and you call timeout, you spike the ball. I mean, I've just always wondered, like, back in the day, were they just complete louds? Like, and the clock ran out. Like, oops,
Who would ever thought that, like, in the same sentence, Crash references Vince Lombardi and Chris Ash? Who would ever thought that?
Oh my gosh, that is a very good one. True or false? The over-under on points in the final 4 games. If I set the over-under on points for the Rutgers in the final 4 games at 35, you're taking the under. True or false?
True.
Sarge?
I'll say false.
Wow. All right. Well,
35 points.
And you don't have to answer this one, Cratch. True or false? If the over-under on points for the final 4 games was 28, you're taking the under. Sarge? 28 points. 1 touchdown a game.
Yeah. Michigan is going to shut them out. Penn State, maybe a field like 28 points. I think that'll be right there. I'll say false.
Yeah. All right. So 21. If you think I got to score 3 touchdowns in these final 4 games, what do you think?
God. True. I'll just say true to get over with.
I wasn't going to go to 14. I was going to stop at 21.
I was worried you were going to 14.
I would take the under on 21. That's how crazy this is. I know it sounds ridiculous. I don't think they're going to score 3 touchdowns.
Michigan's defense is great. Wisconsin is.
Penn State. Wisconsin shut them out. Have they ever scored against Wisconsin?
Yes. I think they scored like 10 points against Wisconsin. Okay. I think they'll score about 13 points against Wisconsin. I think Sarge is right. They'll probably be shut out by Michigan. 7 to 10 from Penn State, maybe
20.
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
28 is probably right on.
I think they only had like 30 plays against Michigan State.
I go back to false on the 35. I think 28.
28? Yeah. 28 is the right number. All right. True or false? Aaron Young's commitment to Michigan State is Rutgers' biggest recruiting hit yet. Aaron Young, brother of Avery Young.
It's a big true. It's a big true because I talked to a couple of recruiting analysts today, and they all said they spent like a year thinking that commitment was not commitment, but they thought that they were in pretty tight. His brother is not only, he's playing and coaching staff's raving about him. That's a big one. That's a big hit.
At least he lost to Michigan State. I mean, it's not like he went to Akron or something.
I guess. But Black's year, he was a guy who they keep on raving about him and that he was one of the kids, and they got him from Michigan State. So, now Antonio returns the favor.
Has anybody checked in Stockholm? We still have Sweden? Will you tell me?
They fenced it in. There's a giant fence.
Sure. All right.
There's a fence around it.
Isn't the fence around Sweden like the Baltic Sea?
Be semantics, yeah.
Oh boy, I could look at a map. Someone's going to tweet me. It's actually not the Baltic Sea. It's the. All right. True or false? Chris Ash has a problem, and that problem is Purdue. True or false?
False.
False.
Yes. Because Jeff Brom's not going to be there much longer.
No. I think what Steve is saying, there's a 3-year rebuild, and I think Purdue inherited a mess, and they had no tradition whatsoever, and now they're They went to a bowl game last year, and now they're beating Ohio State. I say true.
Yeah, let's talk about this for a minute because it's fascinating. And Rutgers fans, and we're gonna talk about this in a minute. Rutgers fans who cannot get enough negativity. Heat Booster sent all of us a story about not just what they did against Ohio State, which is amazing, 49-20. I mean, a dominant victory at home against Ohio State, but they've got the fourth best recruiting class in the Big Ten now. Purdue does. They've got 4 4-stars. They're recruiting nationally, which I had no idea. Meanwhile, Rutgers is lucky holding on to any recruit it possibly wants to come. That to me is just amazing, and I think that illustrates again the broader problem here, right?
Yeah, I think what I kind of got at before is like a year ago, I remember the refrain was, well, look at Colorado. McIntyre. It took him 5 years, and that's what they were preaching. And, or even you look at, Greg Schiano's year 3, they were 5-7. So you can't, if they go 1-11, it is a giant step back, no matter what way you look at it. And then when you compare it with other programs in their year 3, Syracuse, Purdue, programs that, didn't exactly, have any tradition whatsoever. And, I'm sure Dino Babers, he would be telling people, well, we inherited a mess just as well. And Jeff Brom would probably be saying the same thing, that we inherited no talent as well. And now you see what they're doing in year 3. There's not a lot of examples that Chris Ash can say right now, like he was saying a year ago, where he was saying, well, look at Colorado. It took them 5 years. When you have a year where you regress the way they are is a major problem.
Right. Cratch, I guess you feel the same way?
No, I think you're right. Like, I was just looking at the sense of that I don't think Jeff Brom is going to be at Purdue much longer. I would think that he will be at Louisville pretty quickly. That's his alma mater, or even a bigger job. I mean, honestly,
that's a lateral move.
Yeah, I mean, he'd be going home. I mean, but even a bigger job. I mean, like USC could open. I would think Auburn. I mean, so
yeah, that's a lot of money in those buyouts for both those programs. But yes,
So, I think that the way you guys pitched it, I would say true. I do think that it's a situation where you're 3 years in, and Pat Fitzgerald's comments after the game, I think, kind of ticked off a lot of Rutgers fans and brought on the Eddie Jordan jokes. But at the same time, like
somewhere, Tom Izzo is still like, look, Steve Pikiell's doing a great job, but they should never have gotten rid of Eddie Jordan. I mean, that guy had it going on, right? You can see if you called Tom Izzo tomorrow, he would still be talking about that. That press conference lasted for like a half an hour with Izzo just showering praise on Eddie Jordan. I'll never forget that.
But I was thinking about this, like, as we said at the top of the podcast, they're going to stick with Chris Ash. Fitzgerald is in his 13th year at Northwestern, a school that obviously had a bad football history like Rutgers. He's got the same coordinators. Like, he's built this entrenched culture. He also has that, like, Death Star training facility, that Rutgers doesn't have. But if Rutgers is going to stick with this, and all indications are they are, that's what they've got to generate their hope from. Is that they can
13 years? I think I'm sorry to cut you off, but you're advocating 13 years for Chris Ash?
Oh my God!
The 13-year rebuild, the Rutgers podcast.
I'm not going to see the end of it. I'm not. I thought I would live long enough to see how. I'm not going to see the end of it.
No.
Oh, okay.
No, my point was,
I got to get to the gym if it's going to be this. It's going to last that long. You eat some better. Get some vegetables in the fridge. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I guess my point was they need to hope that people like Pat Fitzgerald are right, that he's going to get it done here, that it's going to change, and it's going to have to be longer than they expect. And I think that's where Rutgers is right now. They're not making a change, so they've got to hope. As Ash said a couple weeks ago, faith without results. Like, they have to hope that guys like Fitzgerald, who have seen something like this, although the circumstances are different at Northwestern, that they're right.
Right. Faith without results is one thing. Faith without recruits is the other problem. All right. So I thought we would do a mean, it's not really a mean tweet, but it's a mean comment from Frank Burns himself. At least that's the name of the person, Frank Burns. And it says, Sarge, Cratch, Politi, and Todrick, serious junior high reporting. You guys are members of the quote unquote newspaper club. I'm cringing reading your headlines each week. Are you all afraid of having your credentials revoked if you give the AD some heat? Get it together or quit.
I mean, for Frank Burns to come back from the dead and troll me like that after I got his touchdown record to get changed, that's just, I can't believe it.
That is tough. And it goes back, I love it. And this is it's been like a complete reversal of the fact, like we cannot be negative enough. And it used to be like, I'd walk around, oh, Politi, you're too negative. Now it's like the game's ending. And I'm like, they play better. And I'm getting tweets at me saying, you better not give them a moral victory for this game.
Well, I don't know if you're going to share this, but I love the anecdote that you gave me when you came back up to the press box the other day after you went through the tailgate and someone, pointed to something that was flying on their flagpole.
This is the story, guys. So I'm coming in. I'm talking to, you can read the comments online today, this man, the most positive man in the universe. He's a 39-year Rutgers season ticket holder, refuses to give up hope. Gives me a hamburger. His 4 generations of Rutgers fans are there. It couldn't be happier. It's hard to find happy stories, guys, right now with this program. So I'm walking away from this, and some guy goes, Politi! And I turn around, and he just points up. He just points at the flagpole, and I look up, and sure enough, there's a garbage bag on the flagpole. And I look back at the guy and goes, you know who that's for, right? I'm like, well, I'm guessing not me. If you're going to point it out to me, you know who that's for. I'm like, okay, well, all right. If this guy's listening now, I'm pretty sure he meant that for the head coach. And there was even a banner in the stadium. Did you guys see that? There was someone at the end held up a fire ash banner at the very end of the game.
And that's where I keep on coming back to. I've seen this before. Kyle Flood, if you remember, he had a PSA for some sort of charity or whatever, and he got booed. Eddie Jordan, same type of thing at the rack. I mean, it is going to get uglier from the fan base, from some alums, maybe some former players.
Yep.
We saw that in Michigan a few years ago with Brady Hoke. It's going to get a lot uglier, especially as the scores get uglier.
And I do have to put a disclaimer, Cratch, and you know this as well. There are positive fans, and I'm going to give a shout out to Aaron Patel on the Twitter. That's his name, right? Aaron Patel. So every time that this guy, Aaron, if you're listening, he'll never, they could lose 65-0 and burn down the south end of the stadium. And Aaron would tweet, look, are you going to blame? They didn't invent fire, right? You can't hold them accountable for but Aaron, they took video of them burning down the stadium. Well, the fire thing is not their problem. Okay. Fire's been here long before Rutgers burnt down the stadium. I'm kidding, of course. Aaron, please don't tweet angry at me. All right. What else do we got? Bye week. We needed a week off. We need it off.
Any predictions? Any predictions for the bye week?
Yeah, I'm gonna get some chores done. I'm gonna reglaze a window in my sunroom. I'm gonna take the kids to soccer. What do you got going on? I don't know.
That's more than
watch some college football. That'll be fun.
I'll be rereading all Cratch's film reviews throughout the year. I'm jonesing.
You're gonna miss it. Can you do a film review of Cratch of the Michigan game or something? Something else?
Yeah, maybe we'll do a film review of the Wisconsin game. I don't know.
What is the team gonna do? What can the team do during bye week? What other than recruiting, which obviously has got to be the focus, what's going to happen here? Is there anything changes they can make? Anything at all that can happen constructively this week?
I think they have to get healthy. I think that's a big thing.
Who's going to get healthy?
I think
I thought about that too. I mean, Tariq Cole, maybe,
Trey
two offensive
Avery.
linemen.
I mean, maybe they finally get Trey Avery on the field. Getting Jonathan Hillman back, I think, would be a big boost, just because you're going to need a lot of running backs to get through this stretch coming up here.
I don't know. Getting Hillman back might not be a positive if it means taking carries away from Pacheco, but okay, I'll buy that.
But yeah, no, I mean, it's really not many people to get healthy. They're not going to be able to trade for anybody. That's not how college football works. So, no, I just think they've got to get as healthy as they can be, and they've got to head into this 4-game stretch, which is a whale of a stretch. And I really just think that they would be smart to get some sort of forward-facing message out now before the beatdowns start rolling, because if you've already made up your mind and you know what your plan of action is going to be for 2019, there's no reason to wait on it, because it's only just going to create the angst around the program, and it's just not going to get – I don't see how it gets better by just waiting until the end to say, okay, this is what we're doing, if you've already decided now.
Yeah, I echo that. I mean, Pat Hobbs, has long said, well, he doesn't evaluate, coaches or programs until after a season. I think he needs to deviate from that, and because the recruiting from that standpoint, decommitments, and they might very well happen anyway. There's not a whole lot that you can control, but at least if you just, acknowledge the elephant in the room, and rather have us and fans and everyone else speculate about it, people who matter are the recruits. I think Pat Hobbs absolutely needs to, come up with a statement whatsoever and it just, endorse Chris Ash if that's, if and that's what we believe, is what's going to happen by the end of the year.
Do you think that's going to happen?
I do. I
so
still
you think when? This week or next week? Are we going to hear something?
My understanding is he's considering speaking before the end of the year. That's my understanding.
Well, this will mean, yeah.
And look, I think football drives the bus, obviously, but you got women's soccer head into the Big Ten tournament with a chance to win it. You've got women's field hockey, which is right on the cusp of making the NCAA tournament. You've got basketball starting. Two most popular coaches, Goodale and Peichel, starting seasons that people are excited about. Vivian Stringer's going to hit 1,000 wins in mid-November if everything goes to plan. Like, you have good things going on here at Rutgers. We all know the strategic plan is coming out at some point. So
yeah, I was going to say, and not a whole lot of fans is not going to create like sexy headlines, yes, but it's something that they've been working on for a long time. The strategic plan, and by all accounts, is done. It's ready to go, and they just can't really announce it because Pat Hobbs knows two things are going to happen. One, if he has a press or if he has press availability over it, the second question is going to be, well, what about football? Is Chris Ash going to stay? Because any reporter worth their salt, would not, waste an availability with Pat Hobbs and not ask that question. And two, you're talking about a strategic plan and what your future holds, and football, when if you're headed to 1-11, it's hard to talk about the future of your program when your football program. We've talked about this before. All the buildings, your women's soccer, all the other good things that are going on this fall. None of it matters when your football program is 1-11. At least that's the perception.
Absolutely, 1-11 and losing the way it did earlier in the season, and the way it's going to lose over the next 5 weeks.
None of this stuff is easy. But, I mean, that's why Pat Hobbs gets paid the big bucks to be the athletic director.
Yeah, exactly. And it is to shape the direction. And that's going to be very interesting to hear the explanation because, again, fans aren't buying it. And that's going to be, and I think he's got to know that and be aware of that. And he walks around the parking lot too. He's getting the same reactions that we got. I mean, all three of us were around that parking lot in different corners of it before this game, and there is a lot of anger. All right, guys, what else you got? Anything else before we sign off?
No, I mean, big week this week. Kind of mentioned it, but we have media days for wrestling and women's basketball, men's basketball. Women's basketball got a big recruit. Sounds like they might be a little bit better this year. And then men's basketball, they might win 8 or 9 games. Yet Steve Peichel could run for president and probably get a lot of votes.
Ash must be looking at that guy. God, that guy. What is that? What is the deal?
He hugs a lot of babies, and you see all these. I get so many of these fans that we went to a practice and look at him hugging my baby and everything, and I guess that works.
He's got the belief without results.
He does.
He's got that.
Oh, I mean the Quaker Steak and Lube in Edison. There's no Chris Ash radio show this week. It's the Steve Peichel show, and they were telling people that were there for the call-in show last week, as they were leaving, like, you guys if you're coming, you got to call and reserve a table, because they apparently expect standing room only, pulling in folding tables, throwing them down in the middle of the floor. I mean, it feels like this Peichel revival that's going to happen.
I thought it was a little over the top, with the Big Ten quarterfinals, and that he actually went up he went up and cut down the net after that quarterfinal game, and I thought that might have been a little bit overkill, a little bit over the top.
easily the best Wednesday performance in the history of the Big Ten tournament.
At Madison Square Garden. Yeah.
Never before has a team gotten more credit for getting to the quarterfinals of a Big Ten. Anyway, all right. I don't want to be negative on basketball. Everyone is excited about it. That's good. Lots going on. We will be back. We're going to be back next week? Or are we going to take the week off?
No, we'll be back. There's no weeks off. There's no bye weeks for the still unnamed
the Piscataway podcast. Okay. All right, guys. And let's sign off here. Steve Plitty, James Cratch, Keith Sargent. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next week.